Hi everyone, welcome back to the Flying Papaya. Today I'm going to guide you through drawing 3 beautiful flowers in Procreate: Lavender, Forget-Me-Not, and Peony. We'll start with something simple and gradually move to more detailed design. These flowers are perfect for beginners and a great way to practice your digital art skills. So let's get started. Let's click the plus sign and then create a canvas of 4,500 by 3,500. That way it's close to an A3 canvas. The first thing I'm going to do is set the background color. I'm going to click the color tool and I'm going to select my palette, which is the lavender one. And I have my lavender here. So the first color is this beige that I'm going to add as a background color. We're going to create a new layer. And here I already have a drawing that I did just to have a reference. The first thing that we are going to do is click the brushes and we are going to use the 6B pencil, but we are going to tweak it a little bit so it's easier to draw. You are going to swipe to the left and duplicate. Once you have it duplicated, I have here mine already. You are going to click on the brush and on stabilization, you are going to put it as 28% more or less. So it's more easy to draw. Okay, click done. And then we are going to start with our lavender. First thing that we are going to do is set the sketch. We're going to start drawing by the stem with slightly curved shape. So let's create 3 stems. 1. Let's try to make it flowy. 2 and 3. Make it longer. Don't worry, because we can add our clusters here later. And on each stem, I'm going to draw some leaves here, 2 leaves on each stem. This is just the sketch part, so we can be a little bit more creative. These flowers have an elongated shape, so we'll make these shapes for you to have a template to follow. And then we are going to draw 3 small clusters of a lavender flower. So let's start with 3 petals, 3, and you can make it smaller as you go. And when you arrive to the tip, you can do 2 petals. Okay, let's start again. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, now we have our lavender. I want the leaves to be bigger, so I'm going to select the selection tool and then the arrow tool and then flip it a little bit. Now that you have your flower, we are going to click on the layers panel, go to the N, click on the N and lower the opacity to a 20%. Now we can start coloring. So we are going to add a new layer and then go to the color panel and select this green. I'm going to fill the shapes. Remember that the shapes must be really well closed. And I'm just making sure that the edges are not too white. Now we are going to choose a soft purple. I have this one. So remember that you can download your color palette in the description box below. I've set the color palette for you so you don't have to think about the colors and you can create something similar like mine. Now that we have chosen our soft purple, we are going to draw these petals. You can also just line the outside because we are going to create the shades later. Just follow your shape, close the shape very well and fill the layer. We are going to do the same with this one. Just follow your sketch layer, close very well, and now you have your 3 clusters of flowers, and what we're going to do is to drag this sketch. I'm going to name this so you can see it. Sketch This is the sketch layer. So we are going to drag the sketch layer to the top, and that way we can see here where the petals are. And now we are going to choose a dark purple. Now every layer should be under the sketch layer. So this, it's a normal layer, but you can set it also as a multiply with the same purple color. But just in case, I'm going to give you this color, and it is easier for you to follow. So now we are just going to outline the lines that you have here. Doesn't need to be perfect because it's kind of a loose flower. Don't worry about being too perfect here. You can always click on the end letter and lower the opacity a little bit if you think it's too dark. And we are going to add a new layer here in the middle under the outline of the petals, and we are going to select this to multiply. So we are going to choose again the soft purple, and I'm going to lower my sketch layer, and we are going to draw some shadows on the petals just in one side. So say that the lighting is coming from here, you need to draw your shadows on this part of the flower, on every petal. Now you see that the outline and the shadows are almost the same color, so I'm going to play with the opacity again and make it darker. I've just realized that I've drawn the flowers and the stems on the same layer, so what we are going to do is to separate them. Click on the S tool and select your flowers, click the arrow tool, swipe down with 3 fingers and cut and paste. So that way you have here your flowers and then your stems. And you can play with their own colors and brightness if you want to. On the leaves, we are going to create a new layer. So we are going to click on this layer to create some shadows and set it as a clipping mask. Once you see this small arrow, that means that you are going to draw only inside of this layer. So in this case, only inside of the leaves. We're going to set this as a multiply. And I'm going to choose the same color that we already have and start shading a little bit. Remember that with the 6B pencil, you can smudge, like put your pencil a little bit lower and smudge. And if you draw with the tip, it will get you more defined lines. So we are going to keep your pencil a little bit low and create some shadows from the stem. And that will create a very nice shadow. And also remember to do it here, so the flower looks that it's giving a little bit of shadows to the stem, and also here because this leaf is on top, right? And also in any stems that are crossing each other, you can also draw a little bit of shadows to create that depth on this flower. So I'm going to define again this. I'm going to define the cluster of petals on the stem here, and then I'm going to the shadows and paint this a little bit. This way it looks more real. And now we are going to create another layer, set it as a clipping mask again, and we are going to choose this color, but this time we are going to set it as a screen mode. So on screen mode, what happens is that every color that you have, it's a little bit lighter, you see? I'm going to lower my brush size to 60%, and then I'm going to draw the veins of the flower. So rotate your canvas as you need it because some strokes are delivered better in some angles. So I'm going to If I want to draw a stroke like in a circle motion, I want to rotate my canvas. Yes. So now I don't like this dark green. I think going to put it as a multiply blend mode because it is a little bit more transparent, and we are going to lower the opacity a little bit. And what happens with the multiply blend mode, it's that it is a little bit more transparent. So that way it doesn't look that dark. And as a final tip, I will add a new layer and add this yellow just to create, that whimsical feel as if the sun was hitting to the flower. And can be fireflies at night, something like this. So something that makes the flower more alive. So we are going to group all of these flowers so we stay organized, and we are going to leave the background layer outside. So we are going to swipe all of the layers to the right and group. And once it's grouped, you can rename this as lavender. And now we have our first flower. So while we have this group selected, we are going to click on the arrow tool and make it a little bit smaller and put it on one side. And now we are going to the next flower, which is our forget-me-not flower, which I think it's a lovely flower to draw. It's a little bit more complicated because it has more flowers, but let's do this. So on the layers panel, we're going to create a new layer. And again, we're choosing a full black, click twice. And we are going to select our 6B pencil, and just like the lavender, we'll begin by drawing the stem. Use a curved line to give it a natural flow, and on the curved line, we are going to make small stems for the flowers and draw some leaves. You can always play with the warp tool if you feel that it's not flowy enough, as I'm doing here. And I'm going to create flowers with 5 petals. So you can do circles instead so that you can keep yourself on track. This is another circle, and create 5 petals for each flower. And we also are going to make this one smaller. And make maybe a flower here under this flower. I don't know if you can see anything. So we are going to draw the heart of the flower, and once we have our sketch line ready, we are going to tap on the layer panel, click on the N word, and lower the opacity. So remember, with the lavender, we created all the layers under the sketching layer. So we are going to create a new layer and drag it under the sketch layer. That way we can paint under our sketch and have the guides. So now we are going to choose another palette, which I have here. It is Forget Me Not. And I have it here right now. So we are going to choose a green color for our stem. And once we have our stem ready, we're going to add the colors to every shape. And now we have our first flower. Okay, so we are going to create a new layer and choose these blue colors because we are going to draw the flower that is underneath this flower, you can see. So they look darker. We are going to draw from bottom to the top. There is no need to add any details on these flowers as they are going to be under the main flowers. Okay, so now we are going to create another layer and choose the blue color. This is an amazing blue. I love the forget-me-nots because of this blue. And we are going to draw on top. Now we just need to drag one, continue filling, and fill the other one. And now we are going to add the center of the flowers, the heart. We are going to create another layer, click on the color, and click this dark gold. So we are going to choose this dark gold. We can adjust the colors a little bit later if you feel that it's too dark. And we are going to create another layer and click the yellow. And we are going to just add a detail here just to make the flower more interesting, you know? I think now we can turn off the sketch layer and we can see clearer. The 6B pens, it's a little bit feathery as a brush. And so when you drag the colors on a feather brushed shaped, this is what happens. You can play with the threshold, but sometimes it doesn't work. And you have to go manually and clean this area, this white area that you see here. And now we are going to add some other details for the flowers. Let me create a new layer. I am going to choose a multiply blend mode using the same blue. And I'm going to create on each petal some details that separates the petals. You can create also some lines for the petals, but I would say separate the 5 petals with these lines. And then if you want to, you can add some lines on some of the petals just to make it uneven. And I'm going to add maybe some shadows. So under this layer, I'm going to add another layer between the flower base color and the lines that we just added. We are going to create a multiply blend mode. So I'm going to create a clipping mask on this layer. You can see the arrow again. And now we can go here and create some shadows if you want to. Always in the same side of the petals. So if you start on the left side, keep it on the left side. Don't worry if it doesn't look perfect right now. It is on the same color like the lines, but we are going to lower the opacity in a minute and you will see the difference. And now that we have our flower, I'm going to click on the layers panel and click on the blend mode and lower the opacity. We can set it to a 66%. You can use other brushes if you want to. I'm just sticking to one so that it's easier for you. Okay, so I think our flower is almost complete. I'm not really sure about this blue, so I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to go to the adjustments and click on hue, saturation, and brightness. This is something I do a lot at the end of the illustration, just in case some color doesn't appeal to me. And so that's why it is important to have all your colors in different layers. So we're going to put the saturation a little bit higher and make it a little bit darker maybe. And hue to 55%. So it is a little bit more purple. Saturation 71% and brightness to 49%. I think they look better now. And I'm going to add some shades to the leaf. So just as the lavenders, we are going to click on the stem, add a new layer, click on the layer and add a clipping mask. We are going to set the clipping mask to a multiply and we can choose the same color that we have here. So remember, you can tilt your Apple Pencil and start to create some shadows. We are going to assume that the light is coming from here again, so every shadow should be on this part. I'm going to add some shadows under the flower because this always makes the flower pop much more. And as a final touch, I think I'm going to the stem again and clear these details that are not perfect. See? And also, if you feel that your shadow is too dark or too strong, you can always click this match tool and select any brush you want. So this brush is a brush that I bought from a gouache. I think it's called Gouache Max Pack, and it has this shadow, but you can choose any brush you want. Go to your multiply layer, your shadows, and start shading a little bit. So now we are going to add the vein of your leaf, and I'm going to choose this light green, and I'm going to create a new layer. And I think it looks pretty nice. Still think that the dark, this gold, it's not bright enough. So I'm going to play with the saturation a little bit and make it darker. Yes. So we are going to swipe our layers again and group. And now you have our second flower. So perfect. The third flower is a peony, which I love. It's one of my favorite flowers. And we are going to create a new layer and choose your black color. So click twice again and choose your 6B pencil. And we are going to draw an oval shape first, just a guide for our cluster flower. And we are going to create a stem. So it doesn't need to be as curvy as the other ones. And from here, we are going to draw one with one leaf, a second one, and a third one. And on the other side of the stem, we are going to create a little bit higher, another stem with a small flower and some leaves that are coming from here too. So remember, the peony has more veins, and we are going to make sure that they have veins on their leaves. So now let's lower the opacity a little bit so we can see properly. And we are going to add another layer and start creating in the middle of the flowers some petals. We have 1, 2, 3, and you just have to build around this circle, you know? And once you arrive here, you can create a shape like this because it is a petal that it's open. And in the inside, you can work inside of the circle and create other petals. On each petal, I like to add like 3 lines coming out from the inside. That makes the flower more interesting. And now I see that my flower is a little bit outside of the stems. So I'm going to click the arrow tool because you remember that this sketch it's on another layer itself. And I'm going to use this tool to rotate and now rotate my flower. Okay, I think it's perfect like this, and we are going just to put the opacity at their maximum, and we are going to merge them. So with 2 fingers, you can pinch, and you have the flower on itself. So I'm just going to make it less round. You can erase the lines that are confusing for you. And so on this, we are going to create a flower bud, and that's our peony on sketch. So let's go to the color wheel and choose our peony. And we have our peony here. So the colors are really easy. We are going to grab this green, which is beautiful. It's like an emerald green. I know the flower is not that dark, but I'm just taking a little bit of creative inspiration here. Okay, so now we lowered our opacity of our sketch layer to a 25%, and we chose the green color and the brush again, and we are going to create a new layer, drag it under the sketch layer, and create a stem. So we are following the lines of the sketch layer, and we are going to fill the shapes. It's really easy when you have a sketch layer. Okay, so we have our final leaves drawn, and now we are going to choose a soft pink, and we are going to create a new layer under the sketch layer, and we are going to trace around the shape that we just created, and we are going to fill the color. So now we are going to outline the petals, and we are going to create a new layer and choose this darker pink and start to outline. You can apply more pressure to make thicker lines or less pressure to make it thinner. Leave the outside without any lines. And so I like to add some lines here. To add some lines here too. And now I'm going to add another layer in between the solid layer and the outline to create some shadows. So this one I'm going to make it as a multiply layer. And this one I'm just going to leave it as it is, and I am going to tilt my pencil and add some shadows. So try to create shadows in the lower part of your petals and here. And that way your flower will have a little bit of depth. I'm going to make this as a clipping mask so it stays inside of the flower. So now I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit of the shades so it doesn't look that dark. And I'm going to add a new layer with a blend mode on screen. And so you can make it with your base color, or you can choose a lighter pink in a normal blend mode. So we are going to assume that the light comes from here again, and I'm going to create some lighting here. Not too many because it will look too repetitive, but something light. And so this way I have my flower with some lighting. I'm going to go fix this line art. It should be a little bit darker, but not so much. So I'm going to put it as a normal blend mode again. And with 2 fingers, I'm going to swipe to the right and I'm going to add a normal pink, which is this one. So I'm going to choose this pink and I'm going to click on the layer and fill layer. So that way the color changes. And I feel like the color is a little bit dull, so I like to add a new layer, click on the layer and click clipping mask, And then I'm going to add a multiply layer in the same color. And what happens with this clipping mask that it is going to draw inside the outline. So now I'm going to fill a little bit every line that it's close to the bottom of the flower, and that way makes the flower darker. So we are going to try to add the shadows now to the leaves, and we are going to click on the layers panel, add a new layer, click on the layer to add a clipping mask, and then on the end letter we are going to select the blend mode to multiply. That way it is a darker green. And so I'm going to pick this green again, and I'm going to tilt my pencil and try to draw your shadows until here. Something like this. I like to add my shadows on the bottom of my leaves. And right now you have the shadows of your flower. So I'm going to bring my opacity to a 72% of my sketch layer. And on the new layer, I'm going to create the veins of the flower itself. So I'm going to drag this layer on top of my sketch layer because I can see better, and create some veins here. Remember to add the central vein and then small veins like this on each side. It doesn't have to be perfectly shaped. You can go over the edges. And now we are going to fix the parts that go outside the leaves. So we are going to create a clipping mask later on, you'll see. And now that the sketch layer is done, I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to drag this on top. And you see that since it is a clipping mask here, I drag it just on top and it converted to clipping mask too. So all the lines stood inside. I'm going to fix this. And I think this, I'm going to repeat it. So on this stem, I like to add something that goes until the edges of the flower. So here I like to erase this part because I think it doesn't make any sense for the flower. And I'm going to create with this green a bigger bud and eliminate from this layer these lines. So now I think it looks pretty nice. This is your peony and these are the three flowers. Remember that we need to group them so everything is organized here. Rename it as a peony. So probably what I'm going to do is put the forget-me-not on one side and choose the peony and make it a little bit bigger. And that's it for the peony. These three flowers, lavender, forget-me-not, and peony, are now complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you'd like to use the same color palette as I used, you can download it in the description box below. And if you like this video, consider subscribing and sharing. See you in the next video. Bye!